All right, I would say we've received several hundred texts this morning on the Dancing Rabbit Golf text line as far as Chris Lemonis and the job that he's doing as the Hell State baseball coach. They're 36-62, 2022 through today in SEC play. I'd say it's 90-10. People are ready to move on and do something different in the program. The overall, what we've heard is this athletic department is not serious about winning, and the list goes on and on. So it's a bad deal. Football's in the dumps, and baseball is 1-8 to start the season. We welcome in Steve Robertson, genespage.com. He goes to every single baseball game. He's got his finger on the pulse of the program. 247 Sports. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Steve Robertson, is it time to make a move in baseball?
Well, I'd certainly say it's time to at least consider that possibility, and, I made some calls last week, and it's interesting. A lot of people, they confuse, reporting with opinions, basically what needs to be understood is, these decisions are going to be made on the totality of the season, but the reality of it is this. People make such an investment in their favorite sports teams. And despite the fact that it hurts a few people's feelings, Mississippi State is a baseball school. Now, we enjoy football and basketball. We're a little more fair-weathered about basketball than we are football. But Mississippi State's a baseball school. The Bulldog brand is known as a baseball school. And you go around the country, that's what people know. And so it's the one thing that people are going to get really, really emotional about. They want to win in everything. But baseball's been something they felt like they've always been able to count on. And then, last year was a really good year for Mississippi State. Could have been a better year. You better believe it. Left some meat on the bone. And you felt that was, maybe a step back to maybe what you enjoyed the first few years under Lemonis. And then, of course, now, 1-8 start in SEC play, people are like, hey, this feels a lot more like 22 and 23 than it did 2024. And so the reaction is going to be negative. And number one, that's a positive thing. People misconstrue that.
Absolutely, it is. I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, and it just means there's expectations here. It's that no people are never going to be okay with Mississippi State baseball losing for an extended period of time. It's just people are never going to be okay with that. And I think that's an important aspect of this because it all comes from a good place. Some people get out there and they say, all these Twitter trolls and message board people, man, they're upset because they don't want to lose, and they're not going to accept losing. And they may not articulate it in the best way, but it all comes from a good place.
Right. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. I think they should have removed it. By the way, I like Chris Lemonis a lot, and I recognize the good things he did, but this is about the Mississippi State baseball program. And you're right, Steve. This is about the people who get in the car from Biloxi, Mississippi. This is about the people who get in the car from Shreveport. This is about the people who get in the car from DeSoto County and Nashville and Mobile and drive and have tickets and want to see a better product on the field. I would have, in a very, very classy way, sat Chris Lemonis down yesterday, thanked him for what he did for Mississippi State. I would have let him go. I would put Justin Parker in the interim role and get an idea of maybe what he is or isn't the next 6 to 7 weeks as on-the-job interview. That's what I would have done yesterday. What do you think about that?
Well, I've certainly seen that idea popped around. Matter of fact, there's a thread on our message board now discussing your comments, from earlier. Matter of fact, I was just looking at it. I think we've got 22 responses to your comments on our message board alone. But, Chris Lemonis is a national championship coach. And he'll be treated as such, and he deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. But and the one thing that I wrote yesterday, and this is not about Chris Lemonis or Ron Polk or Willie Mitchell or Will Clark or Rafael Palmeiro, that there is no one person that is bigger than the Mississippi State brand. Nobody, not Zach Selman, not Dr. Mark Keenum, not you nor I. We are part of something much, much bigger than ourselves that has brought a tremendous amount of enjoyment to millions of people that have enjoyed college baseball over the years. And so it always has to be principles before personalities. And I'm a firm believer in this, is we must protect the M over S brand at all costs, and whatever that entails, and that needs to take place whenever the time comes, that's got to be taking place. But it's all got to be about what's best for Mississippi State, not what's necessarily best for an individual or even for a group of people. And you sign on for that, right? When you come here, right? You understand that all due respect, this isn't UAB, okay? You're
No.
not just going. This is Northwestern State, you know. I mean, this is. And I had a John Cohen and I had this discussion a few years ago, and he goes, you know, when you go to Kentucky and you're a kid, and on Tuesday nights you make an error that opens the floodgates. You know, the only people that really know are those that are in attendance. You know, there's 500 people that showed up, right? When you make a mistake at Mississippi State, before you get back to the dugout, there's 500 tweets, right? I mean, and so good, bad, or indifferent, that's the price of poker when you put that M over S cap on. You are playing at a place where they expect to win at an extremely high level every single year. And I think I wrote about this just yesterday, and just got on the drive back, just tried to kind of collect some thoughts and
share
what I thought. The article called The Genuine Article. And you know, to me, LSU has always been the barometer of which we measure ourselves. And going down there, and I even made a comment to some people in our administration. I said, you know, everything they do there, everything. They didn't beat us well, but besides that, but everything else that they do there is at such a high level. Like everything. Like LSU baseball, number one, has given them a lot of ammunition. But it's not as simple as what's on the field. It's every other little thing they do, whether it be, I mean, as you come in, hey, thank you guys for coming as you're leaving. Hey, thanks for coming. You know, and little stuff like that. Everything is about LSU baseball. And that's one of the things that kind of struck me. I was like, it's not just the product on the field that I'm envious of when it comes to LSU. It's the organization, the infrastructure, everything involved there is at a championship level. And every day that we wake up, everybody connected with Mississippi State baseball, and this is not just the coaches, everybody. Everything has got to be about getting another national title, not about, hey, we want to host. And you know what? That's part of the journey.
Sure.
And it's not, hey, well, we need to be, you know, top 8 national seed. We want to get to Omaha. If just getting to Omaha is the goal, then I think I'm with the wrong group, okay? Because I want multiple national championships. I want what OSU has had, right? And so I think that's the most important thing, because if you say our goal is to get to Omaha, you get to Omaha and you relax and say, well, we did it. No, the expectations here have to be about winning the national title in everything we do, top to bottom, every single day.
All right. So I think it's time for a change. And by the way, LSU would have made a change by now. So if that is the barometer and the standard, you know, LSU would have made a change. I think the administration is missing on an opportunity to see what part. Do you have time to hold over and?
Sure.
Okay. Steve Robertson is going to hang through the break. We'll continue to talk about Chris Lemonis, this Hail State baseball program. Is now the time to give Justin Parker 6 or 7 weeks to see how he handles this thing? Remember, Vitalo was not a head coach. O'Sully Sullivan was not a head coach. Tim Corbin was not a head coach. They have been wildly, wildly successful. But they were in the league, and they understand the league, and Parker understands the league. He's on year 5, counting South Carolina, or 4, counting South Carolina and Mississippi State. Steve Robertson will continue the interview coming up at 9:30 on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. Steve Robertson, genespage.com. Okay. Good morning. Welcome in to the Out of Bounds Show. 105.9 The Zone ESPN, brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Go local. Go with the home team, as Jake Mangum likes to tell us. Congratulations to the Hit King on getting called up to the Tampa Bay Rays. And we are so proud and excited for him. He's been a good friend, great to the show, showed up at charity events for us over the years. And our guest knows all about Jake Mangum, as nobody covers Mississippi State baseball the last 15 years, like Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. I like that Steve said, people are upset, and that's a good thing, and it is. Sometimes, especially Mississippi State people, they don't like to, get mixed up into this stuff. And you have to demand and push. It's the reason why you haven't been as good in football as you should have been the last 50, 60 years. Never forget what Greg Byrne said when we went to lunch one day years ago. He said, "I don't understand why y'all don't win. You're in a tough ass part of the country, blue collar, good kids, unbelievable athletes all around, and yet you've tripped all over and thrown up all over yourself for years." Because you didn't demand to win. Here, a little bit different deal with the M over S and Mississippi State baseball. But we welcome in Steve Robertson, and I said it's time to move off Chris Lemonis, give Justin Parker an opportunity to coach the next 6 or 7 weeks, and have an opportunity to see what he can do. He's super talented. He coaches the most important position or group, whatever you want to say, in the sport. And he's got that stuff about him, and he's already proven in the league. So see what he can do over the next 6 or 7 weeks. Missing an opportunity by the athletic administration. Steve, would you be okay with them firing Chris Lemonis and giving Justin Parker a 6 or 7 week interview?
Well, there's a few things I'd like to say about that. I think the best case scenario, as unlikely as it may be, is for Chris Lemonis to make it, right? I mean, for Chris Lemonis, to this team to get hot and find a way to make it. I mean, hosting's completely out of the equation now. But, the way the league is structured this year with so many teams around you, there's going to be some teams that make a regional right now that everybody's looking at and giving up on. So the best case scenario is for Chris to make it. And I'll be honest with you, in the event that we do move on, I'm not a proponent of these first-year coaches. And let me tell you, look at what's going on at A&M right now, right? Nobody, perhaps in the history of college baseball, was handed a peach of a roster the way Michael was at A&M. And Nick Mingione and them just went into College Station and punked those guys again, And, it's the first thing everybody talks about. I don't think at Mississippi State you have to go hire the hot assistant coach. I think you can go get an established winning coach. And in the event that comes, that's really what I think is better, because this is not, again, we talk about this at UAB, the show, right? Running the show, the operation of this baseball program day to day, there are a tremendous amount of demands that are associated with Mississippi State baseball. A good example is, many of your listeners, right? Well, everybody wants to have their first pitch banquet, right? And have, Ron Polk or have, the head baseball coach at Mississippi State come speak. Well, it's not like that in most places. There's a lot of off the field demands that go with this. And then, this thing can be a circus at times. And I think it can be overwhelming for a guy that's maybe stepping into that position for the first time. And so I like Justin Parker a lot. I do. I think he is going to be a head coach somewhere. And if that scenario unfolds, you know what? I think that's a guy you got to talk to. But ideally, the best case scenario is for this team to play up to its potential, and that makes this conversation somewhat moot. The problem with that is there's many people in this fan base that, even though there hadn't been a change, they're already gone, right? I mean, they're thinking, you know what, I'm not engaged with this product, and I want things to change. And so, but that's how I feel about it. In the event that you do, because at some point you're going to make a coaching change, right? I think it's very, very difficult to bring in a first-year head coach. When you go back and look historically at programs at our station, right? We mentioned LSU. Maneri they gave Maneri the big retirement tour thing, right? And out of respect, right? You go back and look when Skip retired. What did they do? They promoted Smoke Laval,
But they made a change pretty quick.
Yeah, well, they didn't make it in season though. But and I think that's kind of the point that I'm getting to is that I think when you look at programs at our level, it's difficult for first-year guys. It really, really is. And I know a lot of everybody talks about, I want to go get the guy, go get Tony Vitello's chief assistant, that kind of stuff. It took Tony a little while to get going too. And so I think that's an important aspect of it. You got to think about what you're asking someone to do when they've never done it before.
Yeah. Well, all right. So we'll agree to disagree there. I think the move would be to give him an in-season, 21 SEC games, however many non-conference games they have left, interview to see, because he knows he hasn't run it. Like Chris Lemonis couldn't even wrap his brain around what he was walking into. Now, granted, he walked into Foscue, Westberg, Mangum, Allen, Ethan, Bednar. There was some, Elijah McNamee. There was a lot of juice there. But Parker at least knows, having been there for a year and a half. And I'm not saying give him the job, but see what he does with whatever they've got left, 28 to 29 games. I talked to a guy yesterday, Steve, from the Fairhope, Alabama area. He's not coming back. He's done, and he's got plenty of money. He just said, I'm not doing it. And I don't blame him. I mean, he supports, he writes checks, and he's not going to watch it. I think here's another problem, Steve. South Carolina's not any good, and Mississippi State could sweep them or take 2 or 3 this weekend, and the I told you so crowd's going to come out, and, this schedule flips. The question is, do you want to keep Lemonis if they make it on the road as a 3 seed or a 2 seed and go 13-17? Steve?
Oh, I think that situation unfolds and State ends up, winning 13, 14 conference games. I think if you make a regional, I think Chris Lemonis is back. And I think there are some people out there that, win, lose, or draw that are ready to move on. But, I just think, again, I want what's best for Mississippi State baseball, period. And I don't always know what that is. I confess that.
That's a good point.
But I know this. I know that back to your comment about people kind of pulling out. I would encourage Bulldog fans, do not get cute with your chairback seat ticket orders, okay? Because there are thousands, and I mean thousands of orders that are pending on that wait list, just waiting to get those tickets. And if you let yours go, you are not getting them back in your lifetime. You need to understand that before we even go, no matter who the coach is, what the stadium looks like. If you're thinking, well, I'm just going to cancel my chair backs, I'll get them back down the road. No, you will not. You will not get them back because the line behind you is so long, it's never going to happen. And I think that's important. People make emotional decisions. I'm telling you, if you love Mississippi State baseball, do not give up your chair backs. No matter how upset you may be right now, do not do that.
Would you be surprised if it broke today that they let go of Chris Lemonis and made Justin Parker the interim coach?
Yes, I would be.
How much confidence do you have in this athletic administration that none of them have followed baseball until they got to Starkville? How confident are you in them running a national search in baseball?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and it really is. And that's one of those things that I look at, because we're always thinking in these terms, right? I mean, like in the industry that I'm in, we're always thinking about the inevitable change. Like as you meet people and talk to people, you say, you know what, hey, if anything happens and this coach leaves, we got to have a hot board ready to go, right? And so you got to pick names that make sense. So we're kind of always in that. Like an athletic director's always got a short list, right? We do too. We always have a list together. And that's one of those things that I think about is like, wonder if my short list looks like Zach Selman's short list. I mean, we don't even have the same relationships, and you start thinking about it in those terms. And so you've got some people that have been primarily football people. And so I think that's a reasonable concern, right? And that's not a criticism, but it's like, what kind of relationships does this administration have in baseball? Obviously when
none.
Scott Strickland, John Cohen were here. I mean, you had some relationships, right? I mean, and so
and even John, that didn't go smooth. I mean,
no, it didn't. And to be fair about that too, Bo, I think that's a situation too. Do I want to go follow the guy? Right? I mean, like my new boss is the guy that coached the baseball team last.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
No question. No question.
So that's a difficult circumstance. And yeah, I mean, they interviewed some of the biggest names in college baseball, but even that didn't prove to be enough to go get. And John, I think, went on your show and he goes, "Hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to get the best coach in college baseball." And and so he kind of painted himself in a bit of a corner. And then I don't know that he delivered on exactly what he promised, but he did bring in the first coach to ever win a national championship at Mississippi State. So in that respect, he was successful, but he didn't make the splash higher. It worked out for a while, but.
And see, I don't care. I don't care about the splash hire. That's why I'm okay with letting Justin Parker do this thing for 6 or 7 weeks, see how the players, how they play, what he does. It'll be tough. I mean, the players will be upset for 24 hours and so on, but this happens. And if it doesn't work out, fine, then they can go, do I guess, look, I don't know if this administration wants to do. If you go out and do a national search, you're talking about 1.3 minimum, 1.5 million plus for the head coach. And for the 2 assistant, you won't keep Parker because if he doesn't get it, he's gone. Obviously, you won't keep Jake. And so you're looking at 2 new assistants at $400,000 at least a piece, Steve. So then that's before director of baseball ops and so on. So we're looking at, we're well over $3 million plus a 1.3 to Lemonis if you fire him, right?
You got to buy out everybody. You got to that's
Gotro, Parker.
Yeah, everybody involved got a contract. So you'd have to buy out these contracts. Then you'd have to buy the contracts of the coaches that you hire.
Okay.
So it's not just this easy undertaking.
$6 million. I'm thinking is that if you went now. If you hired Parker, if Parker had an in-season interview and was able to show some progress and that he can handle it and all that, Justin Parker takes a job for $750,000. So we're talking about a different deal. And then I don't know what you do, Steve. Do you go to Justin and go, "Hey, look, we're not having to pay $1.5 million right now. We hope we do have to pay you that because you win. But now we're going to give you $450,000 a piece. I need you to go get the best hitting coach and then another, badass recruiter to put on staff." I mean, that's another scenario. So you either go and get a sitting head coach for 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, or maybe even more, and everything else we just went over, or you go with a Parker approach. I mean, how do you see it, Steve? Which direction do you want to go, and are they willing to throw down $6 million considering they're way behind the 8 ball in football and trying to, fund a team at $10+ million right now on the football field?
Yeah, and that it's all more complicated today than it ever has been, right? Because of all the rev share percentages and how this is going to work and NIL. It's never been a more complicated time to be an athletic administrator. I just don't. I think it's important not to get the cart too far before the horse, right? And right now, my focus is getting the media credential to go over to Memphis and hopefully winning that game, and then seeing what happens this weekend against South Carolina. And I do think that's a big weekend, right? I mean, when you look at the situation,
they're not good.
Exactly, and you got to take them. I mean, and it's like people are like, "Well, we'll win that series." And I mean, you got to think bigger than that. You got to go sweep that series. And again, I think ideally. I think most people just want Chris Lemonis to make it. As far I'm speaking administratively. I think everybody wants give him every opportunity to make it and get this thing turned around. He is a national championship coach, but there's some fans out there that feel like, he's had ample time to do it, and it's conflicting. It really is. I mean, because you want what's best for Mississippi State baseball, and I want what's best for everybody involved. But nothing is bigger than the M over S, and
I go back to this, and I think you nailed it earlier. If LSU is the standard, and again, I think the world of Chris Lemonis, but if LSU is the standard, Mississippi State is 36-62. since 2022. LSU would have made a move, Steve.
Oh, I agree, and they would actually probably would have made it in 2023. But I think the circumstances behind that were very challenging. You had all these injuries in 2022, and Zach Selman shows up, and his first order of business as your athletic director is not going to be to fire the first coach to ever win a national championship at your school. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And of course, blessed with the gift of hindsight, people are like, hey, that's what probably should have happened. That's easy to say now. But, when a guy wins a national championship and he battles through a year that had a ton of injuries, you're going to give him every chance to make it. And then you felt like last year was definitely a step in the right direction. You won 40 games last year. I think it's only happened 25 times in the history of the program.
They had a good year, and that's fine. But you just can't do this. You just can't. And even if they sweep a 1-8 South Carolina team, I mean, you and I are running the numbers, Steve. They got 21 games. So can they go 13-8?
Down the stretch, that's gonna be tough. I've run the math so many times in my head, right? It's like you look at all this stuff and you start thinking, okay, well, who could you reasonably expect to sweep? Because that's where we are now. We're taking two out of three just isn't going to be enough most weekends, right? I mean, you're going to have to go pick up some sweeps out there, and you look at this. Alabama's better, and so that's a team you've been counted on. And Lemonis has owned Alabama since he's been here. You're going to be able to go to Tuscaloosa and sweep them? Probably not. You got to go to Auburn. You got to go to Missouri. They're awful. But you start doing the math and you start saying, okay, well, where do these wins come from? But I think it's kind of like our football fans that play the Egg Bowl in September. You just got to take it game by game and week to week and figure this thing out, and hopefully you can find a way to make it happen. Because one season is not worth the program, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like you're not going to. It's not just about what happens this year. You got to look big term. What is best for Mississippi State baseball? And I don't always have that answer, but I think that's the thing where Zach Selman's got to be very judicious.
I mean, it would be good in some respect if Lemonis and them won average 2 or 3 over the next 7 series and made a 2 or 3 seed on the road. But then you got to ask yourself, are you prolonging the inevitable? I mean, what are you doing? So you are setting yourself up that they could make. All right, what do they have to do? Let's just cut through. I mean, other than score another run than the opposing team. All right. Pico has been amazing. All right, so take that out. What do they have to do to win, to go 13-8 on the way out?
Well, I think you've got to settle a couple things in your lineup. And, I think Sawyer Reeves is the better offensive second baseman, but you just can't trust him defensively. And I hate that. He was an elite defender at shortstop at the Citadel, but he, for some reason, the transition over there, I think it's in his head a little bit now. But I think maybe you need to settle the lineup a little bit. You got to play some matchups because that's the game, right? But, I think when you look at what Gat Sanders has done, and he is kind of a punch and Judy guy, right? I mean, he's not going to hit home runs, but sometimes you just need somebody to get on base and pass the bat, right? And so I think you got to settle some things there because you can't keep having these defensive lapses, right? I mean, and that's a big part of it. But I think the biggest thing is just finding this rotation, and it's like I was talking to Mike Nemeth last night, and I said I don't know that I don't just throw Cieri out there as an opener, right? Let him, if he can give me 3 or 4 innings, and then turn it over to Ben Davis, because I think Davis is just simply better out of the bullpen. I think some guys just maybe it's the mental aspect of it, and I can tell you from my coaching background, there's some kids, the better they are is when you just turn to them in the dugout and say, hey, go get loose, right? And they don't have time to think about it, right? Because some guys, when they find out, hey, you're pitching next Friday, they spend 6 days agonizing over that thing, And so I think that maybe what you do is, Ben Davis I thought was outstanding against LSU, but I think he's better out of the pen, and I think maybe that's what you do. You find a role for Cieri, and you go from there. But I think maybe you pulled the trigger too quickly on Stone Simmons. We were talking about this yesterday. It's like the Oklahoma State game. People's like, oh, he pitched so poorly. Guys, he got 3 ground balls where he couldn't get an out.
Yeah.
In 1 inning. And so it's like I can't keep trotting the same guys out there expecting a different result, right? I mean, I think you got to shake some things up and. It's easier for me to say, right? Because my job's going to be here, right?
Right.
No matter what happens, I don't have to live with those consequences. Of course, I'm indirectly affected because when Mississippi State wins, it's better for our business. But yeah, I think you got to settle this rotation thing. And again, that kind of goes back to the Parker thing, right? I mean, we thought that Jacob Pruitt was going to be a weekend starter. It hadn't worked out. You know, he was a weekend starter at Indiana State, dominated a Southern Miss lineup, and there were some people in that program when Pruitt committed to Mississippi State, that kid's best arm we saw last year, you know, and so that hadn't worked out, you know, and then you look, you go get the kid from Kentucky and he ends up signing in the draft, and people are like, why didn't we do more in the portal? Well, I think the attempt was there, and I don't think that they deserve to be criticized for that, but the reality of it is it's a results-oriented business, and so, you know, I think Parker's got to figure that aspect out. What do you do with the rotation? You got to get that settled and settle a couple spots in the lineup, and you know, this team has a lot of talent. I don't think anybody denies that, especially offensively. I think.
Oh, I think they have some dudes. They just
you got some guys. Got to put it together.
Yeah.
And real quickly, but one of the things I wanted to say too, it's like, and I don't know if that was what they showed on television. Yeah, it's like I've read some of these things, and a lot of times it's just, you know, people kind of rest their insecurities on the shoulders of others, right? And people are like, I think this team has quit. That is completely false. And
I don't believe that.
I go back to that. Noah Sullivan thought he hit that ball out on Friday, and when he realized that it didn't get out, the look on that kid's face. If anybody that loves Mississippi State baseball, if you saw the look on that kid's face at how disappointed he was that he didn't come through, then you would have all the evidence that you need that this team is still bought in. And I think that's an important aspect of it. When in times of trouble, that's when the managerial skills have to come in and your leaders have to kind of step up. But these kids have not quit, and I hate to even call them kids. I mean, some of them are almost 30, but the guys have not quit. And so you've got some very talented guys that are playing, you know, really for each other. And you know, I do expect a good week, but that's the thing that, you know, there's some people out there that are just so ready for change. I think even if you go 4-0 this week, while some of that will quiet down, there's going to be those critics that are they're going to be unrelenting.
I think it's a mess. And I just go back to, you know, it's 36-62 is just, there's no excuse. As much as I like Chris and all of them, there's no excuse. 36-62 is unacceptable. And but I enjoyed the debate, and appreciate you coming on. And we'll talk soon. And I want you to tell everybody on your board that even if some of them don't like me, that I love them.
Oh, and I love them too.
Be good, man. All right, Steve Robertson, genespage.com. His board's hot right now. Colonel Kang posted earlier, and it's on fire. If you missed any of that interview, it will be on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Search Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds. Apple Podcast or Spotify, search Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds. And we did 25 minutes of SEC football with Tom Luginbill. That will be on Apple Podcast and Spotify too. We would love for you to subscribe to our podcast. Search Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds. We'll see you tomorrow. Lunch today brought to you by Aplos at the Renaissance.